You're listening to the Bag of Games Game Out Loud podcast for Tuesday, March 26th, 2013. Hello and welcome to the Bag of Games Game Out Loud podcast. I am your host, Jordan Rusnak, and I'm very lucky to have with me this week the tenacious Tory Mayfield.
Hi.
Hello and welcome. The first woman to ever come on the podcast. It's a monument day.
Welcome.
Yay.
You also hear there coital Colin Cooper.
Oh, come on, really?
Hey,
Again?
I get stuck with gelatinous all the time, so you get coital.
I never call you gelatinous. I call you baloney balls, which is way better.
Well, thank you for that coined term. And yet again, sitting there silently and probably contemplating deep video game thoughts, we have the robust Rob Peterson.
Yes, quite
robust.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everybody, for making the time to be here this week. But I will go ahead and try to minimize our downtime here, and let's just jump right into what we've been playing. And I hear you've been playing the new Gears of War, Tori, so how about you start us off?
Yeah, I've been playing Judgement. I haven't gotten all the way through it because it's really irritating the crap out of me. So I'm about 2/3 of the way through. It's a pretty interesting game. I like this backstory on it, but the gameplay kind of sucks. You do have your great weapons and such, but the storyline's really choppy. I mean, the story is supposed to be Judgement, so you have 4 characters of Kilo Squad that are being judged for their actions during wartime. And each one of them is telling a different portion of the story. But not only does that make it choppy, but in between each of the chapters that the characters are telling you, you gotta stop at certain points, and you can choose your own adventure, and it's just really, really, really choppy.
Now, you're a pretty big Wars fan, aren't you? Or Gears fan?
Yeah, I've played every single one about 1 billion times. It's actually what started me on console game.
Wow, yeah. You've been trying to convert me over there for a while.
Yeah.
I just can't do it.
Are we to assume that the leaving of Cliffy, this is the first non-Gear Cliffy B Gears game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he just barely left though.
Yeah,
But he wasn't working on that game. He was working on Fortnite.
Right. Well, and they added People Can Fly as one of the developers too.
So those are the guys who made Painkiller and what's that? What's the epic game that came out with them like a year ago? You guys know what I'm talking about? The goofy one?
No.
No.
Oh, the
Bulletstorm. Yeah.
Oh, that's by the people who make Trackmania.
Really?
No. That's
No, it's People Can Fly.
Yeah.
That's who she's talking about.
Okay,
Right.
Yeah. I never played Bulletstorm. I was getting them confused.
So when you say choppy, like you mean I guess I was confused. Is Choose Your Own Adventure? I mean, like, so it's like a flashback, like they're all being judged in a court, and then it goes to flashbacks of their story as they're testifying. Is that what I'm kind of getting?
Exactly. So, like, you start with Baird, and then it'll move through the different people that are in the squad, and you're introduced to new players. There's a guy that's like transferred in from somewhere else. He's got kind of like a Russian accent. But anyways, they all tell a different section of the story from their perspective, but you're always playing as Baird. And while you play, so instead of just like playing through the storyline, taking cover, beating what's in front of you, moving forward, you get to a section and there's literally a cog symbol on the wall. And you have to look at it, like you've located a piece of paper or something. And it says, you can declassify this section to the court. And essentially it's like, it makes things harder or different. So, like, Kilo Squad says that they beat all of these people they had really thick armor, or you only use shotguns, or that sort of thing. And you get more points.
Oh, so it adds challenge. It adds challenge elements to each level that you then choose before going into that round.
Right. And that round, it's you get about 3 of them per person's experience, so about 3 per chapter. And it's pretty much you go into a section and you have to hold it. It's mostly wave-based, so you'll get a bunch of waves, and then you'll just move forward a little bit, but the actual movement through the city is very small. it's mostly holding a position while waves come at you.
I enjoy that in multiplayer, but single player, that seems a little lacking.
Yeah, and I mean it's supposed to replicate because this is Judgement. This is the first before we ever meet Marcus Phoenix and all of them. It's the very beginning of when the locusts are attacking the city, and so it's supposed to be like their waves of the army are coming at you, and they don't really have even broken down the structure enough to where you can just run through and kill a bunch of them. So I understand the concept. It's just really difficult for gameplay.
Now, here, like my thing with Gears is that this game was definitely not on my radar. I mean, I'm not a Gears fan. I really enjoyed the first game for my first playthrough when I played it. Oh gosh, back in 2006, I'm gonna say. With the first playthrough, I was like, wow, the graphics were really great for console, and the gameplay was interesting and kind of new. I mean, the cover shooters weren't as prolific at that point. So I really enjoyed my first playthrough. I wasn't really that aware at the time of Cliff Bleszinski, but I know that he left, obviously, the company because he, said he didn't want to be known for bro games, as he put it, I think. Or I'm definitely paraphrasing that. But I think that maybe this game possibly suffered as much hate as the games will get from some people. I think obviously Cliff Bleszinski gets a lot of credit for being a pretty good designer, and he was working on Fortnite. So I'm very confused that he left, but I think it sounds like this game suffered from his leaving and probably from multiple dev teams being put onto it.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think that the main problem with this was with the introduction of Gears of War 2 is when they first started doing Horde mode online, and everyone really loved doing waves and, fighting off the hordes for 30 plus levels or whatever. And I think they tried to take that into the storyline, which I don't think he would have gone with if he would have stayed with the program, because that's not how the stories are told.
Well, that sounds like the most uninteresting level design I can possibly think of.
Indeed. Like, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, I mean, Mass Effect, like, to me, because I never played the single player games, is a horde mode, but I understand that there's a huge, wonderful game outside of this horde mode that the multiplayer has. Sorry. And I don't see how they would feel that releasing a game only containing horde mode. I mean, I'm sure it's not only horde mode, but if it's coming off feeling like that, then that's generally what the feeling will be. So I just don't see why they would find that to be a good idea.
Yeah, and it's at least as far as I've gotten, and I've done Baird and Coltrane and the new recruit, and I'm partially through the new guy that came in. I can't remember his name for the life of me at the moment. I'm partially through him, and I think there's probably going to be another chapter after all four of them have kind of explained their story. But from everything I can see, it's just continuous wave. Like, you'll have 2 or 3 waves in one section, move about 25 feet up the road, and then have a couple more. Oh. So it's pretty stupid.
Oh man, that sounds terrible. Oh my
God. If at least you moved a few clicks, like you were running around just looking at the environment, at least then you'd feel you were at least progressing, right? But you're just moving literally up the road.
No, literally like across the street or something to a mansion or things like that, or up an elevator shaft or something like that.
Oh my God, that's awful. Oh
yeah,
my God.
And the whole time you're doing this, you're also trying to look for, because the new gameplay also, you earn stars to open up different levels, and you win like prize boxes for online play. Like, they're really pushing online play, which is really different for Gears of War as well, because nobody really liked the gameplay after Gears 2 online, because you're so heavy. But so you're looking for all these little things to earn stars and kind of progress. And most of them, actually, if you click on those cog symbols, which I've been taking great pains to try and do all of the little choose your adventures, make them harder. Most of them are timed. So like you have 3 minutes and 30 seconds to get through an area or something like that until gas goes off or something like that. It's really lame.
So they ran out of ideas pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
I guess after
we need to put out another title, and we need to get more money. So we're just going to go ahead and take the multiplayer and make it a single player. Then we don't have to develop anything other than the shell of a story.
Right. Well, and I think the backstory, it's something I was really interested in, because, with Gears 1, you just start, with Phoenix coming out of being in prison and all this kind of stuff, and you don't really know a lot about him. And so this is, Baird and Coltrane before all that, and so it's kind of interesting to see that, but it's not as interesting as I thought it was going to be.
Well, this game hit my spidey sense pretty hard, as far as I didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I was surprised it was even coming out, to be honest. I was like, didn't we all kind of come together and say we don't want anymore? Or maybe that was just me. I don't know, but
we all, as Colin, say we don't want anymore.
We don't want anymore. I mean, I bought Gears of War 2, and I paid the full price for it, and I got near the end and I just stopped playing. I got bored. Like I said, I enjoyed 1. 2, I enjoyed all the way to the end, but then I just got, I don't know, it's just too cover shootery for me. You run into an area and you might move more distance, but then you see perfectly formed cover blocks and you're like, okay, well, there's my next encounter, get ready here. And then you come up and then you move forward a little bit and you see perfectly formed cover blocks again. You're like, well, I'm probably going to fight some enemies here. And it was just too formulaic for me. The first game, though, it was one of the first games that I had played. It was the evolution of the third-person action game from Resident Evil 4 instead of standard, and then Gears of War 1 came out, and everyone's like, oh wow, so this is where this kind of style can go.
Well,
but then it kind of got stagnant.
It's kind of the problem you're seeing with Uncharted 2 now, which is Uncharted 2 came out and was the sweet new thing, and everyone started copying that, and now you have these series that kind of pioneered a certain style competing with all the other games they inspired. So at this point, it's like Gears, which was so fresh 5-6 years ago, all of a sudden feels really, really stale.
Right.
Well, yeah, but at what point does that new awesome mechanic become the everyday thing, and then they have nothing to go on? Their staple has now been turned mundane.
Well, I think that kind of goes to the genre. I mean, to the credit of the genre, right? We have games like first-person shooters or RPGs. They've evolved over time, but what they are at their base core is very strong and obviously approachable. And then we have these kind of flash-in-the-pot cover shooters, which are huge hits when they come out, and then people try to replicate that success, and it's not so awesome because that success, that uniqueness is what made them great, and then when it's just replicated, people feel it's stale. But I guess other genres, for whatever reason, they're easy to replicate and innovate and expound upon, and they're just more approachable as time has gone on, or maybe they just evolve better. I'm not sure.
Well, as the case may be, we'll have to talk about that later. Is there anything else you've been playing, Tori, or you just been focusing on the Gears of War?
I got heavily sucked into Skyrim for the past couple months, and I finally hit it in my apartment. So I started playing a little bit of the last Assassin's Creed.
Assassin's Creed?
Yeah, the fourth one? Not the last one. I mean the last one that they put out.
Oh, Assassin's Creed 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, the third one. To get ready for Black Flag. That's the one that's coming out next.
What are you thinking of Assassin's Creed 3?
I like it. It's interesting. It's different than the other one I played. I've honestly only ever played the first one and then this one. So
wow,
it's different.
Big. Yeah, that first game is considered to be, I think, one of the bad games, right, guys? Not so bad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an Assassin's Creed fan in general, but the second one is actually I put 20 hours into it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. They learned from their mistake in the first one. The first one is a great premise, but it just seemed really repetitive and not very complex, and they kind of fixed that as the time went on.
So did you recently discover Skyrim? Is that what I'm getting?
It's not that I didn't discover it. I bought it a long time ago. I just refused to unwrap it because everyone I knew that, got it when it came out and unwrapped it, they're still playing it, trying to find the mystical end. And so I didn't want to even try, and then I just got really bored and opened it up one day. So, but
I can tell you, I've said I have almost closing on 200 hours in that game myself, but it's a fantastic game, but it'll burn you out. It just runs itself into the ground. Well, after an insane amount of hours, it runs you into the ground, but it is a fantastic game. And if you haven't played it, I mean, you hit it from yourself, as in you're playing a ton of hours, I imagine.
Yeah. On my 3-day weekends, I would literally play from when I woke up to when I went to sleep for 3 days solid, and then wouldn't play for the other 4 days. And it hardcore on me, and I couldn't take it, so I hid it.
Yeah, it does that.
How do you hide something from yourself? I don't understand. I hide stuff intentionally from myself, but that's usually, or unintentionally. That's usually when I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this here so I'll remember it, and then I hide it.
That's called losing it. Just to say, I don't know.
No, I unintentionally hide things from myself.
Okay. Sure, we all have our ways of dealing with reality.
By hiding it, I handed it to Chad and made it, my boyfriend, and made it disappear. So, yeah. Nice. I'm pretty sure it's in my closet.
And how many hours did you get into it?
I really don't know. I probably played it for about the last month and a half or so. I don't really know how long, to be honest.
So we're looking around 100 at least, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty typical for sure.
Yep.
Well, thank you for letting us know what you've been playing and giving us that insight that I shouldn't even go buy Gears of War, even though I wouldn't anyway. But let's go on over to Rob. You were rather quiet this last round, so speak up, sir. What have you been playing this weekend?
Well, yeah, I've never played a Gears of War game, so I didn't feel like I had a whole bunch to contribute to that. Like, oh, well, that sounds like different than the other game I never played. But
yeah, I never played it really either. I played one round and I was like, these guys are heavy. So you say they're heavier in two? I can't even imagine. But sorry, yeah, go ahead, Rob. What have you been playing?
Well, I picked up a couple things this week. I went ahead and got the Duke Nukem 3D Megaton edition that they came out with, which is just kind of a smoothed over and updated version of Duke Nukem 3D that has like mouse look, and they didn't redo the graphics, but they're 3D accelerated now, so it just smooths out the pixels and gives it a nice clean look while still looking classic.
Is that Apogee now? Right? That did this? Put it back out, I mean?
I think Gearbox got the whole shebang. I'm not sure exactly how the rights panned out with that or who actually released this version of it, but I don't think it was Apogee.
I just remember Dave Oshry was pimping it out like hardcore, and I know he works for Apogee essentially. Well, it's Interceptor, but I know he was like promoting the crap out of that. So.
Oh well, it could be. It's all right. It doesn't really do anything that you couldn't do with mods if you had the game, and actually the mouse feels a little janky. It's like it's got that kind of floaty feel, and I think the X and Y axes are not even, so it's like you move the mouse up and it's slower than when you move it left to right. So it's probably one to skip if you already have the game. If you don't have it, it's not a bad version.
No, so is it kind of like Doom? Oh, so the Megaton edition, is that the one where they cross it over with Fallout 3, or is that just a mod I have to go get?
Megaton probably isn't a Fallout 3 exclusive word. I mean,
it's just immediately popped into my head, and I'm like, what? Megaton edition?
Same with me. Exact same with me.
But are you going back and ripping off heads, shitting down necks, looking at pixelated titties and such?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. It's still the same game it was. And it's fun. It's a hell of a lot better than Duke Nukem Forever if you want to get some Duke Nukem in.
And it costs less.
Does it? I don't know. I'd figure Duke Nukem Forever is probably in the bargain bin by now.
So it's kind of like Doomsday Engine, which is something Rob introduced me to, not this week, but last week. So.
Yes, it's not quite as good as that. The Doomsday Engine for Doom is really kick-ass if you want to play a slightly updated but still relatively classic-feeling version of the first two Doom games. That's awesome.
Rob, have you used the Brutal Doom mod?
I've looked at the Brutal Doom mod quite a bit. I know Colin knows more about that.
Yeah, technically I'm a beta tester. I haven't actually beta tested for it, but I'm like in the beta testing group for it. I should probably just do that. But I mean, I approached the guy on Facebook, the devs, and they got back to me, and I'm in the beta. And I think it's really cool what they've shown from it. I mean, there's like finishing moves where you literally lift a guy up and put your shotgun under his chin and blow his brains out. Like there's some crazy stuff like that they've put into the game. You know, explosions and you can flip people off. You know, as you shoot. I mean, it's a really interesting mod.
Flip off. Interesting.
Yeah. I don't think it's the same kind of thing. I mean, Brutal Doom's kind of a reimagining of Doom instead of just what these other kind of re-releases like Doomsday Engine and Megaton Edition. These are more just kind of updates and putting it into 3D and giving you free look, instead of like Brutal Doom is like a total reimagining of what Doom is.
Okay. So it's not expanding upon what Doom is. Well, I guess it is. It's expanding upon what Doom was, but creating something completely new.
It's expanding upon what Doom, not what Doom is, but what Doom can do, if that makes sense. You know, it's still Doom, like, but instead of, like, so the level design I would imagine is the same, but within that level design, your abilities and weapons and graphics and animations and AI are all enhanced.
Before we get too brutally off topic, I think we're going to go back to Rob here. What else did you pick up this week, man?
Well, the main other thing I've been playing is the same thing Colin's been playing, so I guess I'll bounce it over to him, which is Warframe.
Warframe! I played that game too. That game is fantastic. I was going to bring it up, by the way, but now I guess, Colin, what's up, buddy? What's this Warframe thing you're talking about?
Well, I just discovered it late last night with all of you fine gentlemen as we all downloaded it. Warframe is a Mass Effect-ish, I get kind of Gears of War-ish too in a way, game that is free to play. Download it from Warframe. I can't remember. I'm assuming it's warframe.com. I honestly don't remember.
It might be Warframe game, but I do believe it's warframe.com.
Yeah, I think it's warframe.com.
Right, so it's a free game. It's 1 gig, as Ryan DeBrawl, and I know you'll listen to this.
It looks amazing.
Like a salesman, practically, for it last night. He's like, I can't believe this is 1 gig, guys. 1 gig for this free game. You should get it right now. Call now.
It looks fantastic, and it's only a gig.
It does look fantastic. It's a very strange game. It's essentially not an MMO, but like it's a progressive multiplayer game that you always go to destroy the core, grab the core in a spaceship, and third person action.
Well, at least as far as we got, that's all you do. It very well may change it up later.
Well, and I think did you guys figure out what Warframes were? Why it's called Warframe?
No.
Because what you're playing are Warframes. The characters you're running around the character you're running around as are called Warframes. Like if you go to the match options or the marketplace, you can purchase different Warframes. And the game is free to play, but it is quick to show you platinum, which is the stuff you buy for real money.
I mean, but it does have there's so much there for free. You know, you play with friends and it plays like butter. It runs really well. You get upgrades really quick.
For only a gig.
For only a gig. And it really does play smooth, though. It's really incredible what you get for that free price because, you know, within 1 or 2 games, I was upgrading my weapons. You're changing the weapons, the color of your weapons, the color of your suit. You know, you're upgrading, you're putting perks on. You have magic-ish abilities. Like you're very nimble in the environment. But then
wall running and jumping just feels amazing when you're running up those areas and just like jumping across huge caverns.
It does, but there is a hollowness to it as well. I mean, it's a great game, and I absolutely recommend it, but there's a hollowness to it as far as the physical combat feels very, very gamey, very Mass Effect. Mass Effect minus, you know, the cool parts of Mass Effect, which are the way the power wheel works. I think it's probably, if you get into it more and you probably advance and play a lot, you're probably going to find it more interesting and more fun because, you know, it's keystrokes instead of power wheels. But power wheels being like, you know, bringing up your option for activating different powers. So I think it could get really good. But what it was right now, I think, is really interesting for about an hour, and then I probably won't ever play it again. But it was really fun, and I was really impressed, especially because it was a gig and it was free. So what can you say, you know?
I also got to say that the little animations that they put into it, as stupid as that sounds, really make it more fun. Like you can run and slide off a ledge, and then your guy has an animation for like aiming as you're falling, and then you can land back into your slide and keep shooting. Just little weird touches like that might even be glitches. Are pretty fun.
It feels fun. Like it feels fun. It does feel light though. I know what you mean, Colin. It feels like Mass Effect light. I mean, I play a lot of Mass Effect 3 online, and that game, like the weapons feel like they're hitting heavy. Like when you do a melee attack, you feel it. And this one, you just feel like you're slashing through guys. There's no like real feel to the attacks. I mean, even when you're shooting,
it feels to me.
It
feels to me like a. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Just say, it feels to me like a free-to-play game that's still in beta, which is exactly what it is. It needs to be evolved, and they just haven't done that yet. I think in 6 months, this is definitely going to be a game you're going to want to come back to. Because I can see a lot of ways they can go with it that would make it really excellent, and I have a feeling that they're going to do some of that stuff. But right now it does feel right.
Like there's no like it kind of hints at this larger world. When you start up, you literally are on a galaxy map that's very reminiscent of Mass Effect as well. In many ways, it's reminiscent of Mass Effect. So they imply that there's this bigger world and a story, but then it's just like you get into it, you get into your hub screen and you join up, and then it's the same thing. You board a ship, you come in through the vents. Literally every time the vents drop and you drop into the level and you play a game. It's very, very pared down in that way. So there's nothing as far as content story-wise. Like, it's just like, it's very much like PlanetSide, I guess, but way less. It's not that massive multiplayer kind of feel, but it's just like, get into battle, go, little levels, small objectives. You have a very simple objective, rather. So small level, simple objectives, done. So you beat a level with each other, what, in 10 minutes? 15 tops?
And coming from Mass Effect, that feels really short. Like, it didn't feel like we encountered nearly enough enemies.
Well, it feels short, but it also feels hollow in the sense, when you're playing Mass Effect, you're getting a lot of character stuff, and like there's cutscenes and there's interesting objectives sometimes. This is always just go to one place, which is just a waypoint, no exploring. Go to the waypoint, destroy or grab that thing, and get off the ship. That's it. That's the game. Destroy, get off the ship. That's it.
Hey,
but
Colin,
for what it is, it's great.
Did you know that this is made by the same guys who did The Darkness 2?
Really?
Really?
Yeah, I'm looking at this right now, and apparently they co-created Unreal and Unreal Tournament with Epic, and then they did The Darkness 2. They're doing the new Star Trek game, it looks like.
And then this was like a side project?
I guess, but that explains why it looks so good and feels so expensive, because it just kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, who the hell made this?
It does. It does not feel like as all the things I've been saying about its hollowness, are definitely true, but it does not feel like an indie game, at the same time. It feels like a full,
it's very polished.
Yeah, the moment-to-moment combat, yeah, the thing runs like butter. I think Rob actually mentioned that when we were playing last night. It's just that there's a lack of freshness very quickly in the game. It feels. Maybe we played 4 or 5 levels last night, and after a while you're like, yeah, I'm done.
Well, it's just missing design. I mean, all the key components are there, and that's why I really think it's going to get better, because all the mechanics and everything are in place. They just need someone to come in and design some more interesting things for the player to do.
Well, and make it a little more informative. I mean, like we ended up skipping the tutorial, so we don't know what that's like, but having information more on the screen, I believe, would help too, because when we were trying to figure out how to use those modifications and the abilities and stuff, there was a lot of open space on the screen they could have used to have writing that could tell you how to interpret what's going on the screen, instead of being like, what the hell is going on?
And that says a lot. I mean, there were like 4 of us on, like 4 experienced quote unquote alpha gamers playing this game. I know. But still, like 4 people who play games on a very, very regular basis, who could not figure out the fucking menu system to upgrade our weapons. All of us, with not alone, like collective mind style, could not figure it out. So that says something about your interface. So obviously we're very beta, again, Rob, going back to that, but this needs a lot of like user testing and intuitive flow, because stuff like that just kills a game for me.
Well, other than Warframe, Colin, anything else been getting you going this week?
Yes. We spent a lot of time on that just because we all played it, but I've been playing on my GameCube again.
Wow.
I think I mentioned on the podcast a couple months ago that I got a GameCube again because I'm a big fan of that system and a big fan of Zelda, particularly the Zeldas that came out on that system, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. And I've been playing Twilight Princess again. I unsealed my factory sealed copy, decided I don't care, decided it's better to play than to display. Although it was hard to unseal.
Did your hands shake as you used the thing to try to open it up?
It was rough but it's great. I've got the discs, I've got the packaging, I've got the manuals, and there's a real manual in there, with all the like breakdowns of the story so far and the weapons and all that and the enemies, and it's great. It feels so old school to just go through an old manual, and that game's great. I play a little bit of that, but the thing I want to talk about on my GameCube is I'm about 75% of the way through Resident Evil 4 again, which has been just fantastic experience. I mentioned on the podcast probably about a month or two ago that I was playing it again, but I kind of lulled off because the beginning of the game's a little slow, like a lot of games. But then a buddy of all of ours, Nick Tolvey, who is a podcast semi-regular, he came over and we played like 7 hours straight and like made massive progress in the game. And I forgot how wonderful the weapon upgrade systems are and just the whole kind of RPG element of building your character in that game. It's so fun, and the gunplay is really fun, even though you can't move when you shoot, which is what Gears of War, going back to that, kind of innovated. It's like, well, when you aim, you should be able to move still. Resident Evil 4 didn't quite learn that, but that actually does add to the tension because it's semi-survival horror. You've always got plenty of ammo, but there's hordes and hordes of enemies, so you need plenty of ammo. But you cannot move and shoot at the same time.
When did the GameCube come out, and then when did Resident Evil come out? I say because that was Nintendo's. What?
I think it was like 03 or 04. It was later in the cycle, I believe.
It was real close to the end, yeah. The game was the system. I'm gonna say 99-ish.
No, it was after that. It was like 01.
Was it?
Yeah,
was
it had
it?
to have been.
That system only lasted a few years. That was a short.
2005 it came out, so it was right at the end of last gen. It's basically a current gen game.
Dude, it looked like at that point it was on the GameCube, obviously, but compared to Xbox and even other games, it looked freaking good, really good. It still looks good. I mean, lots of jaggies, obviously, when you're playing on the console, but hell, I mean, you play on a 1080p TV, and Uncharted 2 has lots of jaggies, but so there's that. But it's a really good looking game. It plays really well. The story is ridiculous. I love that it's such a video game in the way that there's no realism to it at all. There's a zombie merchant, welcome stranger, that whole guy, and then there's like the upgrade system, and if there's like a enemy standing on a ledge and you kill him, the ledge like shatters and a door opens. It's like, okay, well, I guess his heartbeat was keeping that ledge standing and that door open. So
Dead Man trigger.
Yeah, Dead Man, exactly. But it's so unforgivingly a video game. I love that about it. But besides that, I guess Warframe, that, and a little The Pit, the Sword of the Stars, is that what it's called? The Pit, a little bit of that, but that's pretty much what I spent my time on this week. I've had the week off of work, so I played like a bunch of Resident Evil 4.
Oh, so how is it so hard for me to get you to play some Far Cry then?
Probably because I've been playing Resident Evil 4.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I, which I will not go into in depth, have been playing Far Cry 3. Colin here was nice enough to grab it for me on the sale, so I've been playing that single player, and then the co-op with you guys, which is surprisingly fun, and we even got Marco Kari from Bag of Games on, so that was a lot of fun, and definitely I think everyone should try to, if that game goes on sale, pick it up at least to play with your friends for the co-op, because it's a good time.
Yeah, with 4 people, holy crap, that game is amazing. Wow.
I was like, what's he gonna say? But also, I was over at a buddy of mine's place who, right when I showed up, he looked at me and he said, "Man, I'm so excited. I just got the new Walking Dead game." And I'm like, you mean the point and click adventure one that came out, just got finished? He's like, no. The Activision one. I'm like, oh, oh no. And so we're sitting there and we're waiting for it to download because he just got it. And we're waiting, and it's taking forever. We get the game finally booted up, and he is just excited. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna play this game," and it boots in, and the smile just starts slowly going away. And he gets into his first encounter and just starts laughing hilarious, just full on belly laughing. And I'm like, "What is he laughing at?" And then in between laughs, he just starts saying, "This was a waste of $50," like multiple times. It looked absolutely terrible. Like PlayStation 2 era graphics. The gameplay was, I mean, granted, we only played for like 2 levels just because it was so bad, but they give you all these different weapon types, right? So you have like a knife, You have a hammer, so you have sharp and blunt weapons. Then you have, of course, your guns and stuff like that. So guns obviously draw in more walkers, or you'd hope. We didn't actually see that work, but they we ended up having a whole bunch of zombies come one way, and my buddy was sitting there slashing them because you're supposed to do head damage, but you can't do like enough of it when they're running at you. So he ended up circling around behind them and just stabbing them all in the back of the head. And he's like, oh, once he figured that out, done. Like, levels over. Zombies were no longer a threat, no matter how many there were.
I could have told you that the second it got announced.
Yeah, it's like the Star Trek game. There's some games where you just hear about it and you're like, oh, that's gonna suck. And I'm predicting it now. That Star Trek game's gonna suck ass.
Well, I don't know. Some tie-ins do decently. I mean, Elite Force, I think is what it was called for Star Trek Voyager. That was a fun game.
Oh, I'm not saying there's never any bad licensed games. The Chronicles of Riddick ones are the example I always use. Those games were amazing. I'm just saying,
but they're
you can see one screenshot and hear the announcement, and even see the way the announcement is made, and have a pretty good idea of when something is just like something that Activision sat down and we're like, all right, let's just spend a tiny little bit of money on this and shove it out the door.
Let's shit this out.
And it's usually Activision. Remember the GoldenEye remake?
Oh, yeah. God. Yeah.
So,
Tori, are you down with The Walking Dead at all?
Yeah. I read the whole series and watched everything. I played a little bit of the download game, but not the Activision one.
Oh, yeah, don't bother with the Activision one, but the download game is great.
Dude, the point and click is a masterpiece. So, yes. Yeah. That's talk about a good tie-in. I mean, that thing is amazing.
Yeah, I think I played it for about a couple hours or so, and I just got stuck, and I don't remember what I did, but...
Yeah. Was that our game of the year? What was our game of the year again?
We settled on Dishonored, but Walking Dead easily could have been it. I mean, there were...
Yeah, that's right.
I say Hotline Miami.
That was I think yours was Hotline Miami. I think mine was Walking Dead. I don't know. Anyway, that's such a fantastic game.
How sad is that?
I know, right?
Oh, it's Journey.
We may or may not play a lot of games, guys.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. But I also played one more thing here, and I only played one round of it, but it seemed to actually scratch this racing itch. I ended up getting Sonic Racing Transformed, I think is what it's called. Sonic Super Racing Transformed or something like that when it was on sale on Steam.
You played it for like 14 hours straight.
Yeah, man. You were immersed in that.
According to Steam, yeah. I remember sleeping during most of that, but I did end up falling asleep, I believe, during gameplay, but that's because I started playing at like 3 in the morning. But I ended up waking up and it said first place, so I guess I did well. I remember having a huge lead when the last thing I remember having like half a lap lead. So I guess I was good. I could have just coasted through, but it's really got that kart racer feel that I've been looking for years, that I tried to get with like Mod Nation Racers and Mod Nation Racers and those style of games. But this game really does have that feel of I've got power-ups, I've got fun levels, I've got competition that's just going to be wacky, and it's got multiplayer aspects to it too. So I can't wait to get people in to play that game. Since I'm a big, Mario Kart fan, Diddy Kong Racing fan.
What was the mod racing game?
Mod Nation Racers? Dang it. Mod Nation
Force
Racers.
Unleashed.
Wait, are you talking about Track Mania?
No. This was a PlayStation game that it's basically, the way it was kind of touted was a Little Big Planet for racing. And it ended up having immensely long load times, like... I would have friends over, and a third of the time they were there, we'd be waiting for load times. You would end up having to call people back to the room to come and play. It was pretty gnarly, but and it was really generic. None of the levels felt really crazy. The power-ups were really weak and stuff like that. But this game actually just feels like it's hitting that spot I haven't had itched for a long time. So I can't wait to get more into it. But I'll talk more about it next week. So I think we're going to go ahead and go to our break. And when we get back, we'll talk about our topic, which I think this topic will have a lot of character, because we're going to be talking about characters in video games.
Yeah.
You guys, yeah, you like that? So go ahead and stick around, and we will see you on the flip side.
Game Out Loud. loud. Game out loud.
All right, welcome back. I hope you got yourself some refreshments, maybe pet the cat. That's what I know I did. But one thing that we are going to cover today, which I think is going to branch off into many other things, but the main topic is going to be characters in video games. Because, we cover story in video games a lot, but one thing we haven't ever covered is the one aspect of story that I feel is kind of necessary. I mean, you can have a great story but have no character, and it just feels like you're not really doing anything in that story. So let's go ahead and just kick it off to Rob with, how do you feel about characters in video games, and what do you feel makes a strong character in video games today? And maybe compare it against games that we previously had that had no character.
Well, we're talking about player characters here, right? Not just broadly speaking characters.
Yes.
Well, as far as comparing it to older games, I don't know that it's changed a whole lot. I mean, we've all been playing Ultima 7 that we're going to be talking about here in about a week and a half, and the character options you get in a game, even that old, that's more than 20 years old, are pretty substantial. So, and I'm thinking back to even first-person shooters like Jedi Knight. You're playing a character, Kyle Katarn. The old Thief games, you're playing Garrett, who has some commentary and stuff. But it's pretty important. Obviously, we all love Half-Life, and that player character has no personality, but the game's kind of designed in such a way that you take away some personality from the way the other characters treat you. So I guess you can get away without having any specific types of personality, but it definitely does help when you have a very likable player character.
Now, we have, you referenced Half-Life. Last year, Dishonored came out, and that also featured a silent protagonist, and I didn't feel nearly as good about that choice as I did with Half-Life's continuation of the silent protagonist. Now, what do you feel like that difference was? Because I remember you said you didn't feel as good about the Corvo not speaking as well, correct?
Yeah, well, I understand why they did it, and that's because Dishonored is such a game that's about choice, that they didn't want the character they presented running counter to the idea the player had in their head. But they kind of shot themselves in the foot with that, because we know certain things about Corvo. Corvo loves the princess. He loved the Empress. He has personality that we can kind of understand just based on the context of the game. And when you have that little bit there, you kind of expect more, and we didn't get more. And they didn't do anything in the game that like Half-Life would, with the way Alex talks to you, or Kleiner, where there's kind of an understanding of how Gordon is. There's none of that with Corvo. It's all left up to your imagination. So I think if they had made Corvo even more of a blank slate, it actually would have been okay. But they took him, they gave him a little bit of personality and then just stopped right there. So I think that's what the problem was.
Any thoughts, Colin? I know you played Dishonored as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have thoughts broadly in general context of the topic. As far as Dishonored goes, I have to say I really actually agree with Rob. I want to argue. The core of me wants to argue, but I can't.
Shut up, Colin. Just shut up.
You shut up. You're so goddamn right, Rob. No, really, I mean, Rob's exactly right. They set up just enough of the character to kind of ruin him and then made him silent. The reason Gordon Freeman works so well is, and he fails at points. I'm not going to say Gordon Freeman's perfect as a character, but the reason he does work so well is because when you meet people in Half-Life 2, it's all, well, for the most part, you're establishing relationships. And I guess when I say that, I'm talking about Alex Vance. You're establishing relationships, right? You have pseudo relationships with Kleiner and Eli Vance, but you're establishing the main relationship with Alex Vance. So you meet her and you've got those the look in the eye technology, which was very revolutionary. So and we've talked about it in the podcast before. So when she looks you in the eye, you establish actual human connection with her, and you form relationships with her as you play. In Dishonored, it's forced into you. This is who you love. This is who you care about. This is the world. Now we've established who you are. Go. I think that does cripple it from the start, and the reason Half-Life doesn't is because it does just the opposite. It's a totally blank slate. You fill in the blanks. It gives you no spoon-fed information, and you must acquire that information from your own deciphering of the world and your interactions with characters. As a more general picture of character in video games, if I may, I'd just like to say I think, over the years, Rob is right again in the sense that we've always had the importance of the character you're playing, but I feel like it's gotten more fleshed out, I guess. I don't want to say better necessarily, but I feel like, they've put more importance into the writing and into that development in general. And sometimes it's gone very, very bad and very poorly, in some games it goes really well. And it's different for every game, Far Cry 3, for instance, I know a lot of people did not like Jason Brody. I did not like Jason Brody and I grew to like that character a lot. The hard thing about that is it takes away your control of the character. It takes away your inhabiting the character, because then all of a sudden they're making choices for you when the rest of the time you're making the choices: who to shoot, where to go, what to craft, what to do this, what to do that. But then they take away these narrative choices from you, and that's hard. And Half-Life does that really well to give you the choice as far as who you are internally.
Well, and another problem you get when you have a very strongly defined character, as nice as it can be, if you don't like that character, like you said you had to grow to like Jason Brody, but say you hate Nathan Drake, you're going to hate Uncharted. In fact, the only negative review of the Uncharted games I can think of is 0 punctuation. And at some point in that, he talks about what a douche Nathan Drake is. Well, I like Nathan Drake and I like Uncharted, but can you imagine playing it if the whole time you're just thinking like, oh God, this guy's such a dude bro idiot?
But he's, okay, that's a whole different argument, obviously. I mean, obviously he must have not liked any of Harrison Ford's roles ever.
Well, no, right, but I just mean it, in general, if you have a strongly defined character that you're playing as and you don't like that character, that's going to be a problem. How many games have you played and enjoyed where you hated the player character?
Oh, never. Yeah, of course, because you are that person. Why, right. If you're playing a person you don't enjoy, you'd stop. Well, unless you enjoy this combat or the systems or whatever, that can overcome, I think.
Hey, Tori, you've been notoriously silent over there. What's your view on the player character?
To be honest, I haven't really thought about it much. But I do like a lot of backstory with my characters. Like, not even, like, I've been watching my boyfriend play, oh my gosh, Dishonored. And so I get what you guys are saying about like the silent character and that sort of stuff. But even like if you're playing a silent character, I still want to know the backstory. Like, I don't think personally, like, it really impacts how I'm going to move that character forward. I have had games that I've played that I really hated the character I was. But I think that was mostly just because I didn't know enough about them. I have a degree in English literature, so I like to know everything about everything. So I never think there's enough information for me personally, but it doesn't really impact my gameplay, I wouldn't say.
I totally agree with you on the backstory thing. I feel like when you step into the role, there's no way you as a player inhabiting another person can form that fully formed backstory, right? So if you step into a player's shoes with a fully formed backstory, which I think Gordon Freeman had in a way, like we get who he is, MIT graduate and all that business that I don't need to recite to our audience because I've said it too much probably. But when what forces things is the choices you make along the way once you've stepped into the shoes.
Yeah.
So like backstory is great. I totally agree with you on that. Like I want to know who I'm stepping into, because usually you don't step into an infant unless you're playing Fallout 3, which you literally do step into an infant coming out of the womb. But besides that, you're usually stepping into the shoes of an adult. So you can't possibly go back in time and inform who you were, but you can choose who you can be.
Well, and that's why so many games have that awful cheeseball trope where you wake up with amnesia. It's to kind of combat that, because they're afraid of having a character who enters the game with all this baggage. They want to have a clean slate, and they don't know how to do that tactfully.
Right, but I totally agree with you, Tori. I mean, like, I think it's really great to know what you're stepping into, and I think and Rob, it is scary to give people that backstory, because maybe they don't want to. That'll influence their choices, maybe, or something like that. I'm not really sure what the fear is, honestly.
Yeah, I don't really understand the problem with it. I think it was kind of something developers were afraid of, and they were just wrong.
Well, for games that when you're making choices in, I mean, if you have other games where you're not heavily making choices, generally you can get a backstory. If it's a pretty linear game, you will get backstory on a character. So, like, while Skyrim, Morrowind, Oblivion, you are the prisoner, and that's all you know, and then you learn from there. You play games with, like you mentioned before, Rob, Jedi Knight. You are Kyle Katarn. Kyle Katarn has a reputation as being a smuggler and this and this and this and this. You know, games where you kind of are playing a character and they're giving you story, but not specifically developing that character the way you want to play them, as far as good or bad. Which I guess my point is kind of nullified by the fact that Jedi Knight was supposed to have a good and bad system in it, but it only changed what powers you had. But I think when you have a good, strong, linear story, which is rarer these days because it just doesn't sell as well, you do get a lot more backlog and back character story.
Well, I think you're hitting something really precisely there, Jordan, is that, there's a difference between, when characters are heavily invested in and when they're not. When you're playing a game like Skyrim, yes, you do step into the world with very little backstory, and they do an excellent job of that's Bethesda again, like I said, with stepping into an infant's feet, like in Fallout 3, and they do that very well with Skyrim as well, because you're not an infant, but you get to create who you are, and then it doesn't matter anymore. Like, it doesn't. Then you're on a roller coaster ride in Epcot, like we said before, and what matters is exploring and world building and whatever, I don't know, name your thing that matters at that point, but character matters none in that game, and then you have games like Rob mentioned, Uncharted, or we talk about Far Cry 3 with Jason Brody, that's heavily character driven, and even really Half-Life. I mean, however you decide to be Gordon in your head, Gordon goes on this adventure, and you get to build relationships, so you don't necessarily have like the id happening as hardcore as like Jason Brody, like your internal conflict, but you create that internal conflict because of the external forces coming onto you, like Alex, and like love, and the loss of innocence from, you don't know anything that's happening. Those things are implied, and I think that's stronger than when it's built in, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah,
I agree.
So, well, that's good.
Yeah, that was
even
good
like
show, gents.
Like,
yeah, right. All right. Well, I guess we're done. No.
Well, like how you're talking about, like, say, like with Bethesda with Fallout. It's really funny actually that you brought that up, because I didn't even think about it until just now. But like when I played Fallout New Vegas, I hated the character because it's the amnesia effect, and you're trying to figure out what happened to yourself in a sense. Like, you see in the beginning, you get shot and whatever, but then you got to like go to New Vegas to find out things, and I really hated that, to be completely honest, because it was like the character had its own life that was still continuing, that I couldn't choose what I was doing. Versus, with the other Fallout where you're a baby and you literally choose your life from that point forward.
And Liam Neeson is your dad. I mean, it's just fantastic. that made my day.
Right. Well, it's an interesting thing. Video games in general right now, the whole genre is struggling to find its voice, I think, still in that way. Rob and I think I shared this with you, Rob. We were watching kind of a really interesting panel. I can't remember what it's from, but it was essentially the Oculus guy, Cliff Blazinski, and some other people talking about, the future of VR, right? So I know this sounds kind of off topic, but here's where I'm getting is essentially one guy said, when film first started, when they first started making movies, filming, motion pictures. They didn't understand that they could even make cuts. Like they didn't get that they could cut film to different angles and do that. That was a thing that evolved out of film. Right now, we don't understand how fully this medium works as an art form, as a storytelling medium. So we're going to get there hopefully eventually. But right now, we're exploring every possibility: silent protagonist, non-silent protagonist, third person, heavily influenced story character. And we're figuring it out. And I'm not saying it's going to be one person. It's going to be the whole community coming together as far as developers and finding what works. But I think it's interesting that we get to experience stories from different angles, because no one way should be right. I enjoyed Dishonored a lot. I enjoyed Far Cry 3 a lot. I enjoy Uncharted a lot. And there's all different ways to tell a story through the eyes of a character.
Yeah, there's no following you today. I
guess not. Sorry, I don't mean to be making any sort of decent point here, but
well, I think we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take something out of Colin's book and go round robin just for a brief summary from everybody. Importance, non-importance, and then the gist of characters. So let's start with you, Tori. What are your final thoughts on characters in video games?
I like more backstory and less input on how it should turn out, essentially.
Okay. And you, Colin?
That's a very hard question to answer. I don't think I can give a definitive answer, honestly. Like I said, I like a lot of different ways of doing it. Half-Life is obviously one of my favorite games, as I've said a lot. It's just a well-told story will be a well-told story, I think it comes down to that. You're not gonna convince me of one way is the true religion on this, and if you do it well, you're gonna do it well, and I'll buy it.
All right, and how about you, Rob?
Well, I'm kind of with Colin. I think you can pick any style you want: silent, blank slate, extremely robust and defined. It doesn't matter. You just have to know that is a very important decision, and you're going to have to make a lot of gameplay decisions to support that, whichever direction you go. And when that doesn't happen is when things go off, like we were talking about with Dishonored.
Okay, and me, myself, I like a good, heavy character. I like to know that my actions have a consequence in the world. So I really don't care if I get that backstory, personally. I simply like being able to build forward. But there are games where I feel that the backstory is good, but personally, I like my clean slate. So I think we're going to go ahead and not have a clean slate next week, but if you want to have some input on the next week's podcast, maybe let us know how we're doing this week, last week, the weeks before, you can go ahead and send us an email, and that's at gameoutloudpodcast@gmail.com. Also, we have a very active Twitter page that you're more than welcome to follow and, give into. So that would be at GameOutLoudCast on Twitter. And of course, you can always find us over at bagofgames.com, which is my favorite gaming website. It should be yours too. So head on over there. You can find the wonderful Ryan DeBrawl and Marco Kari. They write over there, and they will probably really love for you to come and read their stuff, because I know that I enjoy it quite a bit. So until next week, I think I'm going to say adieu to all of you. So Tori, thank you for joining us.
Yep, anytime.
Rob, always a pleasure, my friend.
Of course.
And Colin. So We'll see you all next week. No, I'm kidding. But thank you for showing up and having a good time.
Yeah.
All right. We will see you all next week for the next episode of the Game Out Loud podcast. Until then, have a good one.
Bye.